Today I'll show you how I create these thin and wispy sunrise clouds. Before I get to the clouds though, you will see lots of tips on how to create a smoothly blended clear blue sky. I hope this tutorial fills the gap for those who've been patiently waiting for me to release a sunrise sky painting course.
If we haven't met yet, then hi, I'm Jen from Blue Beach House Art. I teach painting through clear, detailed and easy to follow video lessons so that anyone can create a life they love as an artist.
In this painting, I've chosen to use Pthalo Blue for the clear sky because phthalo is a cool blue, meaning that the hue leans a little bit towards green. The yellow glow from the morning sun will mix with the true blue of the sky so that to our eyes, the sky appears slightly green. Now, Pthalo Blue is a very strong pigment, so you'll need plenty of white added to it to lighten the tone. The colour I'm using is about 1/3 of the way down the tonal range. By that I mean that on a scale from the lightest to darkest tone of Pthalo Blue, this colour will be around 1/3 of the way from the lightest. Before you start, try to mix enough paint to cover the whole sky so that you don't have to worry about running out before reaching the horizon. Take the widest brush you have and apply the paint across the width of the canvas in long, firm, confident strokes. I also take the opportunity at this time to cover the top and sides of the canvas so that I don't have to try and match the colour later on. Once you have a fully painted strip, a little wider than the width of the brush, add some more white to the paint mix and then start another block of colour a little way beneath the first, leaving a small gap of untouched canvas in between. Then use the paint that is left on the brush to blend this colour upwards into the darker shade above. Now, the brush should slide easily across the canvas, but if it feels like it's gripping, it may be too dry. In that case, just dip the end of the brush into your water and keep on brushing until you achieve a nice smooth blend. Try to keep blending upwards to avoid dragging the darker colour down. We want to maintain the palest tone at the bottom. Now repeat this last step by adding some more white to the paint mix and start a new block of colour further down the canvas. Again, blend this into the darker colour above, being careful to always work upwards. Also, don't go too far upwards into the darkest colour at the top. Keep repeating this step until you get about a brush's width away from the horizon. The final block of colour in the sky will be, as you can see, almost white. Now this one is carefully applied along the horizon line before blending it into the colour above. The horizon will be a hard edge. And of course, I'm remembering to cover the sides of the canvas at this time too. Now I want to add a warm sunlight glow to the bottom of the sky. I have chosen to use Indian yellow mixed with plenty of white so that the tonal value or lightness is only slightly brighter than the blue at the bottom of the sky. Unless you are moving very quickly, I would suggest to let the blue colour dry completely before starting the yellow. Otherwise, you risk lifting any half-dry paint from the canvas. You can apply the yellow colour directly over the top of the pale blue and then use a clean, wet brush to gently fade that yellow out as you move upwards. This pale yellow glow is great for a morning sky on a clear day, but I'm going for a smoky morning glow. So for this, I can use a stronger yellow mix, and I think I might even add a touch of pink as well to create a few orange tones. The red I'm using for this project is Brilliant Magenta. Then I want to gradually fade out the colour as I move upwards, so I add some white to the mix so that the yellow becomes very pale, and I also add some water to the paint so it becomes a thin, watery glaze. This will allow the blue we painted previously to continue to show through. I want to avoid any sudden colour changes in the sky, so I continue upwards, but each time I reload the brush it is only with water. This will make the colour more and more transparent until it blends perfectly with the blue behind. Don't forget that acrylic paint goes a little darker as it dries, so if it looks a little too pale at first, the colour will probably end up being just right. Now the sky needs to dry completely before I start adding the essential cloud elements. Okay, now we have a sky foundation to work from. A few lines can be blocked in to give a guide as to where the clouds should go. Titanium white is fine for this, and in order to make the edges of the clouds appear wispy, I've decided to apply the paint with my fan brush. I did work from a reference photo for this painting, and I will include a link to the photo in the description. However, there is no need to follow this photo too slavishly. Clouds can appear in any shape, really. I do notice, however, that more often than not, clouds do tend to run in lines. So although I'm applying the paint using horizontal strokes of the brush, the general direction of the cloud is running downwards in a diagonal line. At this point, only the bottom and right-hand edges of the clouds will be needed to guide us. Now you can see where the clouds should be. Start to fill them in. The light direction is one of the first things you should decide on in a painting, and in this case, the sun, although still beneath the horizon, is situated at the bottom right. That means that the bottom and right-hand edge of each cloud is generally where you will see the most light, so it will be easiest to start there. I'll again use the Indian yellow with some white added, so that the yellow in the clouds will tie in nicely with the yellow colour at the bottom of the sky. This colour can be applied straight over the top of the white cloud outline. The white base will prevent the yellow from being tainted with a green hue from the blue beneath, and will therefore make the yellow appear nice and bright. I extend the yellow a little bit beyond the edge of the white because I want the clouds to start growing in size. As the cloud thickens and grows, the top and left-hand edges of each will be further from the light source. Therefore, the colour will gradually make its way through the colour spectrum. This means that orange is the next colour we want to appear. To create the orange, I've simply applied some brilliant magenta without any white added to the top and left of each yellow cloud. I'm using free flow paint, but if you're using a heavy body paint, you can simply thin it with a little water or painting medium. Because of its transparent nature, when I drag some of the magenta downwards over the top of the yellow, a soft transition from yellow to orange and then pink appears. Again, in order to make this cloud at the top grow larger, I apply the magenta well beyond where I want the orange to end. The same technique can be used for the smaller clouds at the bottom of the sky. However, in this case, there's no need to move the magenta too far beyond the edge of the orange. To keep that thin, wispy feel to the clouds, I then soften the brush strokes of the magenta and continue to drag the colour upwards using a clean, wet brush. There are no hard edges in these clouds, so try to fade out your brush strokes against the background. If you happen to go too far with the colour, no problem, everything is fixable. The beauty of using watered down paint is that you have plenty of time before it dries to remove any excess. Just rub off the unwanted bits with a damp rag and then re-soften the edges with your clean, wet brush. The final colour for the clouds will be purple, and this will go on the edges that are furthest from the light source. For this colour, I've mixed a small amount of the brilliant magenta with some ultramarine blue. I don't want to use the same blue as in the background because I need these clouds to stand out against the clear sky behind. I chose ultramarine because this blue leans towards red, meaning that only two primary colours will be included in this mix, red and blue. If there were any yellow present in the mix, the colour would become greyish. Again, if you feel you've gone too far, no problem. One large cloud, for example, can be separated into two smaller clouds quite easily by removing a small area of paint with a damp rag. Just don't forget to re-soften the edges with a clean wet brush. Another brush I've found really handy for softening these clouds is the long bristled round brush. I inherited this one from a friend and I'm finding it quite helpful. You can continue to build on your clouds as needed with pinks and oranges until you end up with a nice smooth transition from yellow through orange to pink and then purple. Just remember that the yellowest part of each cloud will always be that which is closest to the light source, and those clouds that are furthest from the sun may not have any yellow in them at all. Now that the large clouds at the top have some shadow areas, it's time to match them with the smaller clouds. Because they are smaller and thinner clouds, the shadows will not be so deep. I do want to thicken them up a bit, however, so to the top edges I'll apply a reddish orange. Now all I have to do, if I want to increase the size of this little cloud, is to add some of the purple shadow colour. This time, however, I have more red in my purple mix because this cloud is not as thick as the larger one at the top, so the shadow won't be so deep. These smaller ones on the left could use some thickening up as well. At this point, you could say that this sunrise sky is done, but true to my perfectionist nature, I just couldn't help but experiment a bit more with some subtle changes. Keep watching if you want to see a few tips on fine-tuning the details and troubleshooting problem areas. In my reference photo, there was a low bank of cloud way out on the horizon. So now I'm going to use the same purple that I used as the shadow colour for the clouds to mark that in along the horizon line. Starting at the right, I use a small flat brush to get a nice straight line along the horizon's edge. It's coming out a little too bold, so I'll just add some more white to the mix before I continue painting over to the left-hand edge. Now this part is dry, I do still feel it's a little bolder than I would like. And although the bottom edge should still be a hard line, I want to soften the top edge against the clear sky. So I'm going to go over this low cloud again with some titanium white mixed with water. It may look too white when I first apply the paint, but because I've watered down the white, it's quite transparent and will allow the purple beneath to show through once dry. And I don't want to lose my smoky glow, so I will warm up the lower sky a bit more with some brighter yellow. The low bank of cloud has now dried, and I'm much happier with the balance of tones. And I still have a lovely warm glow in the clear sky. For a more dramatic sunrise effect, we can light up the bottom edges of the clouds a bit more. For those that are closest to the light source, the sun, orange is added to the bottom and right-hand edge, and for the clouds that are further away, the colour is pink, because less sunlight is making it that far. Just before daybreak, when the sun is really close to the horizon, the clouds light up with their brightest colours. We can show that by adding a few touches of yellow in strategic places. Just try to think of where the sun will be hitting the clouds directly. The bottom of the lower clouds that are closer to the sun is a good place to start. For a softer cloud effect, you can continue to blend this yellow into the adjacent orange. That low bank of cloud in the distance is still bothering me a bit, so I'm going to soften it down further. I also have a few straggly bits of cloud that have made their way into the clear parts of the sky, which I would like to remove. I can fix both these problems in one step. By painting a glaze of pale yellow over the low cloud at the horizon, I can make it recede further into the distance. I then continue that colour upwards until I reach the bottom edge of the clouds above. The yellow does become a little paler and less transparent as I move upwards, because I'm adding a bit more white to the mix every time I reload the brush. Now the softer look at the bottom of the sky is more in keeping with my nice soft clouds above. The bottom edge of the upper cloud is a good place to stop with this glaze, because any slight colour difference between the sky colour here and that directly above this cloud won't be noticeable. Okay, I have fiddled with this sky way too much already, but I do want to add one more final adjustment. There are some edges that I want to appear as if they are hanging lower than the rest of the cloud. It's not showing that way at the moment because I've done such a thorough job of blending the cloud colours. So I'll redo the very edges of some of these clouds with a lighter tone. I've chosen to use a pale mix of brilliant magenta and white, to which I've added a small amount of the yellow to give it a more peachy hue. Hopefully this time I've made the mix light enough that the difference will still be visible once the paint dries. It can be so tempting to keep trying out small adjustments in the hope of improving the finished work. However, there comes a point in any painting where changes you make will only take away from rather than add to your work. I'm pretty sure I've reached that point now, so I'm calling this sky done. Thanks for staying with me until the end. For more free art learning resources or to receive fully comprehensive painting instruction, check out what I have to offer on my website, bluebeachhouseart.com.